Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Red Tinted Glasses. And for those listening on audio, a special treat for you because as competitive football returns, thank you very much to Stephen McPhee for updating our introduction music as well. I'm sure a real treat with a wee throwback there to the cup final win. Phil joins me on this episode. Phil, how are you doing?
Doing good, yeah. Excited to get back to some real football. And looking forward to the season getting underway for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked how you did a quick mic check after I pressed the record button. Good to see we're as professional as ever on this podcast. Coming up on the show this evening as we record, we're starting things a little bit in reverse. We're going to be joined by Greg Playfair to preview the game against Hearts, a fellow fan who does the voice on the BBC. And then me and Phil will round up the latest news from Pataudry, including some of the transfer news that has come out this evening. As I said, we're recording this on Tuesday night, and maybe give a little bit of our thoughts on that game against Ipswich. And as ever, we've got the cup-winning T-shirt on display. So if you want to be in with a chance of purchasing that, check the link in the description below as well. And we've also got the description to the Lifestars auction as well, which ends at midnight on the 30th of July. A chance to grab a couple of fine cup prints, isn't there, Phil?
Yeah, no, brilliant work from Natalie. I think everyone's seen her work on Twitter and various platforms. So yeah, to be able to grab one of those and sort of help out with a really good cause, it's a win-win in my books.
Yeah, and we've seen ourselves how good a cause it is, and as a charity to get nearly £500 across to Lifestars so far already this season, and we've got a few more ideas in the pipeline to come as well. So thank you mainly for your support to that, and I think some of the prints are probably half-price bargains there. So as well, real chance to get a good bit of Scottish Cup memorabilia at a bargain price. But something that's not a bargain, Phil, is normally getting a ticket for Tynecastle. You're lucky enough to get one for Monday night's fixture. Excited for that?
Absolutely buzzing. Yeah, like I say, a bit of a shame that we're still at the sort of reduced allocation. I think a lot of people across the league would have normally had Hearts up there as one of the top away days, which it still is a very good away day. Convenient for me that it's 20 minutes walking from my doorstep. But yeah, no, still looking forward to getting into Tynecastle and hopefully kind of changing the luck in that fixture for the away team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even though it is a reduced allocation, we won't be greedy. We will bring a Hearts fan onto the podcast. So, Greg, without further ado, welcome to Red Tinted Glasses for your debut. How's it going?
Yeah, good evening, or hello whenever you're watching this. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. It's always nice to hear Jibes getting in about the Hearts ticket allocation, Sellout FC and Waiting List FC with the 20,000 waiting list for Tynecastle as well. So, yeah, all
Yeah,
good.
the waiting list must not have applied to the group stages of the League Cup, did it?
Sorry, I think I cut out there.
I was saying, did the waiting list not apply to the League Cup group stages?
Yeah, the waiting list does apply to those that are waiting for a Hearts League Cup win as well. So I think that may still be extended by another few years anyway.
Yeah, and I suppose obviously, Phil, being a big team, we didn't have to endure the League Cup group stages this season, at least before Greg gets that job in. Do you think not being involved in that has maybe hindered us in our preparation slightly? Hearts obviously have had some competitive fixtures. We've had some testing games against Fulham and Ipswich.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. There's the argument for those competitive minutes in the legs. Obviously, clubs like Aberdeen and Hearts don't want to be playing League Cup group stage football. They'd rather be in real group stages, such as ourselves in Europe. It is an interesting one. I do think that we benefited from it last season. It's competitive football from that mindset. But, it's also games where you can have that experimentation a little bit. And, I think Hearts are seeing that with a new manager, obviously, in Derek McInnes, getting his philosophy, if you want to say McInnes as a philosophy, across and sort of acclimatising himself to the new sort of Jamestown analytics style of Hearts, similarly to how we had Jimmy coming in and being able to sort of test his philosophy and new players against, opposition on paper, which should be easy wins.
Yeah, and Greg, I suppose reading your fan piece on the BBC, you said McInnes is streetwise, an appointment obviously over the course of the summer. How was that appointment welcomed at Tynecastle?
Sorry, could you repeat that? Sorry, Glenn, just got out there. Sorry.
How was the appointment of McInnes welcomed at Tynecastle?
Yeah, it was really interesting because with the new sort of Tony Bloom, Star Lizard, James Analytics link up, I think people expected a kind of hipster foreign name, bit like Aberdeen with Yimmy Lean, especially after we had Neil Critchley, who, for all intents and purposes, was a bit like a school caretaker, PE teacher coming in. Very much didn't understand sort of Scottish football, and I think people wanted to kind of break the norm in terms of having the sort of same old faces in Scottish football. Derek McInnes was obviously touted as one of the early favourites and front runners, but I think a lot of fans were kind of wanting something a bit different initially, but I was on the fence, to be honest. But as sort of time has progressed, and probably from his first press conference where he said he wanted to bring back big physical Hearts and bring back Tynecastle being a place in which opposition teams hate to come up against, and opposition fans, if they can get a ticket, hate going to as well. And yeah, he's obviously had his hoot since then. Obviously, in the sort of 5 official games, we've played 4 League Cup games, the friendly against Sunderland or testimonial, 19 goals scored, 1 conceded, 8 past a chicken shop, 11 from Mick Kennedy's East Kilbride side. Again, Mick Kennedy's probably a sore name on this podcast, but yeah, it's been very, very impressive. And again, I'll be honest, I've bought into McInnes Ball already.
And how much, you mentioned there 19 goals, 1 conceded. How much can you get, as Hearts fans can very easily do, get carried away by the start under Derek McInnes so far in the League Cup group stages? Or do you have to caveat that with the opposition?
Yeah, I think for being serious, sort of 19, as you said, the 19 goals scored, it's all very well, but we're coming up against half the opposition we're part-time players. They're getting their fitness back as well. There's a kind of real difference there with the part-time and the sort of lower league Scottish football sides. Sunderland as well. Again, I think that side we know with the Premier League in England, the team that's get promoted, they're very much, they're not a Premier League side, are they? They'll go straight back down to the Championship. And I think that was a second string Sunderland side as well. So I'm probably the most pragmatic Hearts fan in the last few weeks. But it's an exciting time, I think, in terms of the league itself. Aberdeen, from their exploits last season, I see it through gritted teeth. The fact that Scottish Cup win, guaranteed group stage football, it's exciting for them. Aberdeen have obviously spent some money to get some new players in. Hibs are spending some money. Dundee United as well are trying to strengthen. So it's quite exciting. And I think if Hearts, Aberdeen, Hibs, whoever finishes third, it will feel even kind of more of an achievement this season as well. Given this the kind of expenditure of all the sort of clubs in the, you would say there's now a kind of top 6 if you include Dundee United in that, and you'd be very surprised if those 6 teams didn't finish there. But I think we'd all love Rangers to be that side that kind of struggle and someone else kind of challenges towards the top end. But no, it's exciting.
And I know when we did the Scottish Football podcast, we'd fair enjoyed winding up the Rangers fans at that very prospect, Greg. But how prepared do you think Hearts are then going into the season? Because again, reading your fan piece on the BBC, Hearts have got an extremely big squad. You talk about the expectation being finishing third, ourselves, Hibs, with European involvement potentially for a few more weeks in Hibs' case, depending how Thursday night goes. I'm sure you're hoping not. Is there a confidence that Hearts should be finishing third this season?
I think you've kind of said that there, Glenn. I think because of likes of yourselves will being guaranteed group stage football, Hibs, I think, as much as it pains me to say, I think they may progress on Thursday night as well. And as much as, you'd hate that, and obviously will be envious every Thursday night, I'm sure I'll try and find a game of five-a-side or something to keep myself busy. It will work in Hearts' favour because I think all of us on here and fans watching as well know the difficulty of playing Thursday, Sunday throughout the season. And I think, given, as you say, 32 squad, we're going to go up to first team players. Again, a lot of these players will leave, but I think Hearts are equipped even just to deal with the Saturday. And again, having someone like McInnes, who is, again, I said in the article, streetwise manager, because again, he's been at your side, he's been around the block in Scottish football. He knows what is required in terms of just that churn, the fixtures, the Livingston away, playing one of the old firm at Tynecastle. It knows what it means. And again, we've got a really good squad size. And yeah, as much as I said during the week, I'll not be liking what's going on in Scottish football. I think when it comes to the Saturday or Sunday, I think we'll be equipped to finish third. But it will be very, very exciting nonetheless for the kind of top six sides, as I said, for that maybe second place as well. But who knows?
Hey, we're always going to hope for second. Do you think then this game has a big impact on the race for third straight away?
Again, I was talking about this with friends earlier on. I think a defeat is probably more damaging to Hearts than it is Aberdeen. And the reason I say that is you guys will know that in the last 14 visits to Tynecastle, you've not won. I think the last time you won was at 2017. Anthony O'Connor scoring the winner. So generally, when it comes to Hearts Aberdeen, it's whoever wins at home. I think the springboard for Hearts as well is we've got some sort of favourable fixtures coming up. We've got Dundee United away. We've then obviously got, I think, memory serves, we've got St Mirren in the cup, but then Motherwell at home. I think, if we're able to get 3 points against Aberdeen, that will certainly help. But defeat there, then it's like last season for Hearts, where a trip to Tannadice, who seem to be all 6'4" giants from across the continent as well, that Goodwin signed, that becomes a hard task. St Mirren away in the League Cup, Hearts' record isn't great there, and I said earlier, 1962 when we last won the League Cup, that becomes difficult. And then you play Motherwell at home, where you're scratching for a win. So I think obviously it's a long season, but I think even that said, if Aberdeen were to not win, I don't think it really changes the complexion of your season. I think given the sort of momentum and the steam that's went into this, it's almost, as you say, Hearts fans are talking about, I'm talking about finishing second. So straight away a defeat to Aberdeen, where you've broken your hoodoo of, what's that, eight years almost of not winning at Tynecastle. You've got guaranteed group stage football to come. It becomes a lot envious, and the mood music changes in Gorgie to one of kind of celebration and something that Tony Bloom's welcomed on Monday night. He'll be there in attendance. It's who can we get from Brighton on loan? Who can we get on the continent? Is this analytics rubbish? That's how quickly it changes. So I'd be interested. I mean, I think given how both teams are coming into this, and as you say, probably you guys will probably mention this later on, that about Aberdeen's sort of striking sort of options, who's going to lead the line, and in Hearts, the other end of the pitch, have kind of got an embarrassment of riches. I think this game will be quite tight. It just always seems to be the case, and I think maybe a single goal will separate the sides.
Yeah, I think that it tends to be a single goal that separates the side. But Phil, interesting, I think, kind of hearing some of Greg's thoughts on that in terms of the race for third, as it will normally be dubbed between ourselves and the Edinburgh clubs. And I think, a defeat, whilst difficult to say, it feels expected, as, we allude to, the away team never bodes well in this fixture. But our run of fixtures isn't necessarily the kindest if we fail to pick up 3 points. So it's difficult to avoid a mass panic if we lose to Hearts, basically because we know what social media and the wind-up merchants can be like.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's the fact that it would be Hearts, it would be noisy on Twitter, it'd be Derek McInnes, it would then be noisy in the Daily Record. You're then going into a game against Celtic. You're then, after that, going into a potentially difficult Europa League playoff. And, a bit like Greg was saying, if you lose the first one, it's got a real danger of it potentially spiraling into, a string of losses, perhaps, which, albeit might not be season defining, it's not exactly great for the confidence levels for a squad of new players, and in a season where there is that little bit of expectation now. I think the good thing maybe this time around is it's Jimmy's second season. He's maybe not got that pressure to hit the ground running and sort of make that name for himself. He's made that name now. He's won the Scottish Cup. He doesn't have to prove anything else to anyone at this point. Whereas conversely, McInnes has maybe got that little bit to prove. It's against his former team. He's, back in the sort of, quote unquote big jobs in Scotland. He's in that sort of upper echelon where he does have that little bit of money to throw around. He's got that bit of expectation to, get those European finishes. So, there's maybe a little bit of pressure on him there to hit the ground running in his sort of opening league fixture. Maybe the new manager bounces out the system now, I'm hoping. He's got that out the system of the League Cup. And he can falter and let us score 5 or 6. But, like Greg says, I think there's a few areas where, Monday could be a little bit, worrying. McInnes at Tynecastle could make it a very dodgy place to go. And as Greg alluded to, the sort of top end of the pitch, the fact that Shankland's kind of found his form again. And I quite like the look of as much as it pains me to say it, the boy Braga is finding his feet quite early on, which is also quite annoying from an Aberdeen perspective.
Yeah, and what about Greg's thoughts there about saying, he feels the game will be tight? Because games against Hearts tend to be tight, whether it's at Tynecastle or at Pittodrie. And I think my kind of worry is that Hearts have a bit of free-flowing confidence, and I'm not saying we don't, but maybe as fans not going into as much confidence because we haven't played some of the part-time teams that Greg's mentioned Hearts have come up against, and seeing the way that, yes, Ipswich kind of cut us open with free will defensively might have some Aberdeen fans worried, also with our kind of limitations at the top end of the pitch, as you've touched on.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like you say, I try not to look too much into the friendlies, but it's hard not to, especially after Ipswich. But I think at the same time, we've not really seen enough of this new look Aberdeen squad. In my opinion, we've not really seen enough of Milanovic. We've not seen anything of Gyamfi. So it's interesting. I think Aberdeen's got that again kind of room to surprise people, perhaps. That kind of fear of the unknown. So I think having that proper competitive game against someone who is on our level, they're not a 7th place Premier League team or a £200 million valued newly relegated Premier League team. I think it'll be interesting. It'll really set that benchmark early on.
Yeah, and I think where this game on Monday night, Greg, is going to be key is at the top end of the pitch. You've already mentioned Lawrence Shankland. What was the feeling amongst the Hearts support during the summer around your main striker?
To be honest, I thought he was a dead certainty to join Rangers. There was that strange situation in which Neil McCann was at Rangers as an assistant coach, who also worked for the agency that Shankland is affiliated with, along with Josh Mulligan and James Penrice. And I just thought it was a certainty because, again, sort of the rumblings I had heard is that, Neil McCann was saying, if Barry Ferguson gets the job, which he was never going to get, you'll be signed, you're coming here. And I think it was just waiting to see who was appointed Rangers manager to whether they would rubber stamp the move there. There was chat, obviously, he was going to go to, I think, offers from China, Turkey and wherever else, but I think he's got sort of a couple of young kids as well. I think maybe his oldest is starting school. You've then got the fact he's just been married. And again, I love Shankland. I think he's probably been one of my favourite players. Take away Craig Gordon or Rudy Scatchell, probably growing up. I say growing up, I'm still young at heart. And I would have been gutted to have seen him at Rangers, but I thought it was inevitable. And had there been any other manager, I don't think he would have stayed. And I think that's bought Derek McInnes a lot of fan affection already. The fact he's been able to convince him. Again, the contract as well would also entice Lawrence Shankland as well to stay. But I think having a manager in McInnes who backs him, wants it to be a number 9 as well, which, again, as we all know, having a striker that can score 20 goals a season in Scotland will lead you to success generally. And the fact we've got him tied in for the next 3 years is great. And I think it kind of alleviates pressure on him. I think we've seen so far in as I said, these League Cup games, that the real season or not, there's been no pressure on him. And again, like I say, it's caveated because it has been pre-season and there has been League Cup games. But you can see there's other players around the pitch and the Hearts lineup that will take the pressure off him. And I think that will just really kind of kick him in terms of his abilities as well. The fact that he's not relied upon to, your only goal threat. We need you to link up play in the center of the pitch and also be in the 6-yard box as well, because he's not that physical in terms of, a typical Derek McInnes forward, as you say, everyone will know. And he's not the kind of most athletic overall, shall we say, but I think his intelligence is really crucial.
And I suppose one thing that Hearts are going to look for throughout the season is more threats throughout the pitch and not have that reliance on Lawrence Shankland, as you said. So looking ahead to Monday night, just a final thought from yourself. Who will be Hearts' main threats towards Aberdeen? And could you give us any sort of confidence that you have some weaknesses that you're fearful Aberdeen could exploit?
Yeah. I think the big threats, obviously, Phil's mentioned earlier about Claudio Braga, who already is becoming a bit of a fan's favourite, probably with a lot of the kids for his sort of Poundland Cristiano Ronaldo goal celebrations that he seems to be doing. I'm hoping that happens on Monday night. Kiziridis as well, the Greek winger, has been very impressive. Shankland, as we've said, I think those guys will be really good. But I think the other player I was mentioning as well, part of it is Oisin McEntee, of a 6'4" central midfielder as well, who, again, Derek McInnes would have just seen him when the analytics came through about this guy and loved him. The fact that this guy played at centre half last season in League 2 in England and thought, this guy will do for me. You add in the fact that we've played a back 3 at times as well, when you've got Frankie Kent, Craig Halkett, Michael Steinvender, Stephen Kingsley 6 foot, Harry Millen 6'1". So when it comes to set pieces, we've done very well. I think we've scored 7 goals in 5 games, 7 or 8 goals from set pieces. And again, we've hired a set play coach in Ross Grant. So I would expect the Hearts starting lineup to have a real kind of physicality compared to previous seasons, where we've maybe came to Pittodrie with George Grant and Alan Forrest and James Wilson, coming up against you. And again, it'll be a totally different proposition that lies in wait for you and the team. In terms of where I'm concerned about, I think probably right side of the pitch for Hearts. I'm not too sure in terms of Christian Bornchevik. He's obviously just joined. But fitness concerns, Adam Forrester sort of seemed out of the picture. We've been playing McEntee there in a few games as well. So I think with Keskinen as well, if he plays on the left-hand side for Aberdeen, I don't know whether that's where he will be deployed, but I think he can really get at Hearts there. I do think that is a weakness. I do think as well, if Hearts play with a midfield 2, I'm also a bit concerned as well. We've seen in the Scottish Cup semi-final last season, we were totally outnumbered. And again, I know it's a different size pitch with Tynecastle and Hampden, but I think if Aberdeen play with a midfield 3, Clarkson always seems to have a good game against Hearts for some reason. Again, I don't know if it's just as a Hearts fan looking at it rather than an Aberdeen fan maybe lamenting his performances at times, but I think he always is due a good game. And I think the other concern I do have is probably just generally the signings you've made. Again, I've not really paid much attention to what Aberdeen have been doing in terms of the business that's came in, but I think there's an element of surprise for Hearts fans because there has been, as you say, this whole Hearts fans were this juggernaut that we can't be stopped, and I think for me it's just that unknown element. I think the one player I think that may come to haunt Hearts is Chusene Yengi. Again, there was chat that Hearts were in from at one point before Shacklin re-signed. And again, I think if it's going to be anyone that's going to sort of spoil the party, and it'll be someone that was linked with Hearts before, a big physical striker from a corner, because Hearts have been good from corners and set pieces. I think he might be the difference.
Well, I'm hoping I get to clip that up and use it against you come Monday night. But certainly, based on his performances so far, I'm not holding out much hope. But myself and Phil will discuss that in a bit more in depth. But Greg, pleasure to get you on. Apologies for some of the interference and technical difficulties we've had. It's the joys of doing podcasting from home. But yeah, great to hear your thoughts on Hearts going into Monday night's game, and I wish you the best of luck for Monday night. Not. Well, thanks again to Greg for his thoughts, and again, apologies for some of the technical difficulties during that. And technical difficulties, or maybe set-piece difficulties, is something we could face on Monday night by the sound of Greg's thoughts. Phil, given Dimitar Mitov's performance on Friday night, concerning?
A little bit. I don't know whether I'm in the minority or not. Judging by your comments, I might not be for once, which makes a change. But yeah, just seemed very unsure during the Ipswich game. Quite a lot of crosses came in. He was a little bit flappy. I kind of thought that Kellerus had revived himself in the Aberdeen goal, the way that he was trying to claim some of those crosses. Similarly, a little bit of hesitation at times as well. I'm hoping it was just, ring rust getting shaken off, and we'll see him doing as usual, flying out the goals and collecting everything in sight come Monday night. But yeah, I think definitely an issue. I think, we're maybe not the biggest team in the world, depending on the starting 11 that comes out on Monday. Obviously, the news that Pape Gay looks like he's potentially on his way to Turkey. We'll come discuss some more of the transfers later on, but that's a tall player potentially out the equation. The fact Polvara can't seem to work his way into a starting spot in the squad, that's another 6'4" player out the equation. So you're really then just looking at the likes of Dorrington, Milne, Canuster, whoever's at centre half, in Kasengi, Yengi to sort of try and stave off a physical threat in the box. So it could be a tough night depending on how we come out. But again, hoping Jimmy's learned from last season. We've binned off the zonal marking, and we're just going to get man-to-man and just do as best we can with the tools at our disposal to kind of defend the box.
Yeah, on Dimi Mitov, I thought he'd picked up Jamie Langfield's old gloves in the changing room, because I thought what would that been, the second goal, I think he could do better with. He parries it straight back to George Hurst, and I also think, as much as you're probably expecting a winger to find the back of the net, I think it goes through Mitov too easily for the third goal. I was, from my angle in the main stand, was pretty disappointed with how it looked. And I'm sure Mitov will be as well. In terms of, you kind of highlighted the physicality and missing some of the taller players there. There were some also comments on the back of the Ipswich game that I think is maybe worth talking about. Again, when Greg mentions the physicality that Hearts will bring, we know what they tried to make Tynecastle an imposing venue. It comes around, he highlighted Leighton Clarkson always having a good game against Hearts, but people questioning whether Clarkson and Palaversa are necessarily the best midfield pairing if a game gets more physical, and there is no more physical game than Hearts, although Motherwell might have something to say about that. Could we see a change in that centre mid pairing on Monday night?
Potentially. I mean, interestingly enough, I thought that against Ipswich, that was one of Clarkson's better games defensively, funnily enough. And he did kind of rise to that physical battle. I'm not sure if that was off the back of his Red TV interview about becoming a leader in the dressing room, and on the back of that, try to sort of show that grit and determination. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. I think we're kind of blessed in a way with the ability to kind of have a midfield to suit different occasions. Obviously, it was good to see Sievert back, getting some minutes off the bench. I thought that Kjartansson has looked quite good throughout pre-season. Shinnie can obviously still go into the midfield depending on what's happening with that left back situation. And then obviously Palaversa, Clarkson, Polvara as well, options we can have in there. So I think we're in that spot where we can sort of adapt. But yeah, I do kind of get the point. I think at times it was mainly down to the opposition. I thought Ipswich pressed really well. Again, I think people need to remember that's a side that's still littered with Premier League quality players. They're used to playing at a pace and intensity that unfortunately is just a cut above Scottish football. And I think that, Clarkson and Palaversa are the type of players that like that little bit of time on the ball to pick out their pass. And I think for the most part, we did play some tidy stuff in the midfield. But when we got caught out, I think just with the quality of Ipswich, it was blatantly obvious when we were caught out.
Yeah, and the first goal was no more of a better example than that when we badly got caught out playing out from the back. But as Keith made the point to me, exactly what you've highlighted. It's an Ipswich side that are used to high press, quick tempo. It's not like a Kilmarnock or St Mirren are not going to come up here and press us that high. So I can see what Jimmy was trying. It's probably not the opposition to try it against, but at least we're learning in a pre-season friendly, not on the competitive stage, which is why I also agree with what Jimmy Tillene was saying, that we've learned more from these games. Yes, as fans watching, it's probably not the best and doesn't fill you with excitement and encouragement going into the season because we're not winning games. But he as a manager is probably learning more than playing a Highland League team and winning 9-0 like we did against Turriff a few seasons ago.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And like I say, I think there were spells, particularly that opening 20 minutes before the £20 million winger went and scored, which, I think is also important to add that there's about 40 million on the wings at one point. I thought for the opening 20 minutes, we played some really, really nice stuff. I thought Ashish showed that you could link really well. Yangi, albeit was potentially underwhelming, also did a good job at being that little bit of a physical nuisance and allowing the likes of Keskinen to kind of come a little bit more centrally and playing behind. So I do think there were a lot of positives to take from that game. And like you say, and like Jimmy said, I think it's that sort of level of opposition we're going to learn from. It's the level of opposition we want to be playing against more frequently.
Yeah.
I think looking ahead to potential Europa League playoffs, majority of the teams that we're going to come up against in that Europa League playoff will be of the exact same ilk as Ipswich. They'll be teams that have played European football frequently. They play at that high tempo. They've got players in that squad that maybe shouldn't be at that level, similar to Ipswich. They should be playing in higher leagues, depending on where our opposition may come from, or they may already be playing in a top 5 league, depending on who we might draw. So, I think all of it is good prep, regardless, and that's why I said earlier on, I'm trying not to look too much into the result and more looking at it from that perspective of it's a learning experience, it's minutes in the legs, and there were promising aspects regardless.
Yeah, and I think, all round you make a valid point there. There was promising aspects. Equally, there was disappointing aspects from the game on Friday night. And like I said, it was a pre-season game, so I can't get too hung up on the result. But I suppose one thing for the likes of ourselves that we can then talk about is in relation to Monday night, when we've spoken, when we've heard what Greg's got to say. How does Jimmy Tillene now approach Monday night? Because some players maybe haven't stepped up to the mark, but you've mentioned there Dante Polvara in his cameo appearance, impressed. Kjartansson, impressed. Have there potentially been players that have played their way into the manager's thoughts come Monday night?
I think there certainly are, and I think conversely, there's maybe players that have played their way out of the manager's plans come Monday night. Like you say, Polvara again looked good. Kjartansson, I think, looked very solid. Sort of commented on it after the Cove game, just how composed he looked and how there didn't seem to be any sign of needing to settle in to Scottish football. Any signs of needing to settle into the team. So I think that midfield will be quite interesting. Like you say, on the back of Ipswich, yes, some concerns for me. I thought that Randy Sandy got a little bit isolated out there on the right. maybe by no fault of his own, I felt Shayden Morris was a little bit underwhelming. And maybe in a lot of people's minds reiterated his role as potentially more of that impact player than that starting right winger. I felt like he didn't want to do that hard graft coming back, which is going to be needed at Tynecastle, just with the way that I can see them playing, try to get the ball out wide at every opportunity. But it'll be interesting. Like I say, I think there was, we spoke about it, that the game against Ipswich was maybe going to be a slight show of the hand from Jimmy into how he's planning to line up on Monday. Obviously, well, in the end, probably not. But it's there's certain positions where I just feel like we're probably not going to be changing too much. Like I say, I don't know if outside of Yengi we've really got much. We haven't seen much of Sockler. Okay, Peter Ambrose got his goal. I don't know if that's enough to play him into a start at Tynecastle. That would be an interesting one. Centre half, goalkeeper probably going to be unchanged. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting come Monday night to see just how Jimmy approaches it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've heard from Greg and what his expectations are for the season ahead. We've been speaking in our group chat about what our kind of predictions and hopes for the season ahead are going to be. And I know Callum's not joining us tonight, but we've got his predictions, so we'll note them, and I'll make a note of them, and we'll see how accurate or inaccurate we are over the course of the season. So now that the preseason is done, Phil, where do you hope, or more so expect, the Dons to finish in the league this season?
Well, I think, a big thing for me, and we spoke about this in our sort of early doors previews, where
someone's already getting revved up for the season behind you.
I know, honestly, I think it must be the Gorgie Ultras. They must have doxed me and are trying to intimidate me before Monday. But I think the big thing for me is looking at league improvement. And I've got jotted down here to go one better and get fourth place. I just think that the season will be close in that sort of chasing pack. I can't see there being really much between third, maybe even second, down to sixth. I can see it being quite close there. But as I think everyone's alluded to, Europe's going to be such a test again. It always proves to be, and even more so if we do make the knockout stage of the Europa League or the Conference League, whatever group stage we do fall into. That obviously then, thankfully for us, from a financial and an enjoyment perspective, prolongs our European journey, but could potentially have a knock on in our league form the longer that we're there.
Yeah. And I do think the European football will have an impact. As I said in my 4-4-2 preview, it's how we manage that workload. Potentially also how we start the season. We saw how important that was last season to have points on the board when other teams then caught up with us. So I'm in agreement with you that we'll go one better and finish fourth. Callum, not his usual optimistic self. He thinks fifth place for the Dons in the league. He's worried about Hearts and also Hibs, depending on their European progression, but also concerned, based on what he's seen so far this season, how we might juggle the demands of Europe and league football with that Thursday to Sunday. Cup football tends to be where the Dons have the best chance of success, as we saw last season with the Scottish Cup win. We'll go to the League Cup first, as that's the domestic trophy that is on offer first. So what is your hope for the League Cup this season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously my hope's that we win it, but in terms of putting my slightly impartial hat on, not that I'm ever really impartial on this show, but I've got us down as a repeat of last season, and getting beat by Celtic in the semi-final is my big guess here.
Well, of course, speaking about the League Cup, I suppose we should mention just now, of course, the draw was made for that. So our first opponents in the League Cup is a trip to Morton for the first time playing them at Capello since Craig Brown was manager, where Morton actually took us to extra time in that game, a Tuesday night. I remember taking the day off work for that one, but the weather was too poor that they didn't let us go behind the goal. So actually hoping for this occasion that if tickets allow, we can get in behind the goal, because I think, Capello's got that real old school ground feel to it, and it'd be good to properly tick Capello off in that fashion.
Yeah, it is one that I would have liked to have gone to, but I'll be watching that from a lovely 30-odd degree beach in South Carolina, or potentially from Patriot Point, because I think it falls the same day as the Charleston Battery game I'm planning to attend. So if anyone, for some reason, from Charleston Battery listens to this show, if there's a Povara 6 jersey kicking about from 2 seasons ago, do let me know. I will pay top dollar.
Both me and Callum are predicting wins for the Dons in the League Cup, going all the way in that competition. Scottish Cup, obviously, holders of that, looking to make it 2 in a row. I've got us getting to the semis. I feel the SFA is not going to be as kind with the draw. Can't be as kind 2 years running. What about yourself?
Again, I've gone for a repeat of last season. We're going to lose to Celtic in the semi-final of the League Cup, but we're going to go back to back in the Scottish Cup, Glenn. I'm going bold early doors, and I can see us retaining once more, and revitalising the Aberdeen glory days, please.
Are you saying we're beating Celtic in a exact carbon copy, or?
I think we'll beat them in 90 this time. I think we'll again, it's all about improvement, and I can see us.
I'll just make a note of that.
Yeah, put the stamp down. Come May. If that happens, then I expect every pub in Aberdeen to just give me a free tab.
Well, for the Scottish Cup, Callum's just put get to Hampden, so it's a very vague, because we could obviously get to Hampden twice with that. So we'll leave that one open to interpretation. Europe, obviously Monday night brings the Dons' first league game of the season, but also brings us the Europa League playoff draw. So our first opponents for European football this season will be discovered on Monday. I think it's lunchtime. Hopes for European football. There's been a lot of debate about whether Europa League or Conference League is better for us. Where do you lie on that first? Let's discuss that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to see Aberdeen at the biggest table possible. I don't think anyone can say they wouldn't. Whether that's the best thing for us in our current iteration of the squad, I think the jury's probably still out. Personally, for me, I think Conference League, I know that there's been the debate about, but there's, the more money in the Europa League. I just can't really see us winning a game in the Europa League, unfortunately. When you look at the teams that qualify for the Europa League, especially with the way that the format's changed, there's so many big teams that, 4 or 5 years ago probably would have been Champions League teams, let's be real. So I just couldn't see us doing that. Whereas in the Conference League, Hearts probably should have done better last time around and reached that knockout phase. So you would like to think that Aberdeen's got that chance to reach the knockout phase, which would just eclipse anything we could earn in the Europa League. And plus as well, I feel like the conference, you get some of those funner away days to the middle of Timbuktu, etc., which, will be fun if people can find a route that doesn't cost an arm and a leg.
Yeah, so I've pulled up the tweet that Vitamin T put out through the week for costs involved. So Europa League getting to the group stage would earn the Dons 3.63 million euros versus 3.17 million for the Conference League. A win in the Europa League group stage earns you 630,000 euros versus 400,000 in the conference, 210,000 for a draw in Europa League versus 133 in the conference. Reaching the knockout stages in the Europa League gets you 500,000 euros. A top 8 finish in the Conference League is 400,000 euros. Finishing 9th to 24th, which, as you've said, should be Hearts. Should have been Hearts last season, is 200,000 in the Conference League. And then getting to the round of 16 in the Conference League would earn you 800,000 versus 1.2 million in the Europa League. So I do think, despite there obviously being kind of 500,000 difference in which group you go into, there is room to build that back up in the Conference League, and that's through winning games, it's through drawing games, progression opportunities. And I think regardless of what group stage competition we're going to be in, Pittodrie will sell out for these games as well, so you've also got to add ticket money on top of that. I think what is also good is UEFA have imposed a €20 maximum away ticket price. So I would like to think if the club are sensible, they would make it £20 across the board. Maybe 25 if you're taking in the foreign exchange differences. But still, a really good opportunity to capitalise on revenue. There's a third kit rumoured to be coming out on Thursday. Talk of it being a white and gold strip, so it's another money maker on top of the already fully sold out. It's not black and gold, but the North Sea oil kit. So real money spinner for the club across the board. But in terms of prediction for Europe then this season, Phil, what have you got us going for?
Yeah, I've got us doing that same old Aberdeen thing. I feel like we'll have a very good away game in our Europa League playoff. Maybe get a draw against a former European giant, perhaps, and then just absolutely collapse at Pittodrie and end up at the Conference League. But I have said if we do get to the Conference League, I'm hopeful that we would make those knockout stages in that competition.
Yeah, I think, well, that's a clean sweep for this podcast is Conference League knockouts. I do think it'll be, I'm not saying it's the game's going to come too soon because it's going to be in the end of August, but just on what I've seen just now and some of the quality of opposition that we could come up against, especially like Braga, Anderlecht, a couple of the Polish teams, it could be, I think, as you say, the glorious Aberdeen, so close but yet so far. But I think we could benefit in the Conference League to be competitive at least. Next one for our predictions is who you think Player of the Year is going to be this season.
Yeah, again, I think this is probably quite unanimous across the board from us and probably most Aberdeen fans as I've gone for Topi Keskinen. I feel like this is the season that I think he's got to really become that standout player. Obviously had a good under-21s Euros, showed real signs last season coming into the team. So I think now's the season he's really got to put himself on that map. And, if he does want that sort of big move in the next year or two, now's the time to really show it, especially when he can play on that European stage.
Yeah, unanimous for yourself and Callum, and I think I agree. And again, it echoes what I said in 442 that I hope this is going to be the season for him on the back of him finding himself in Scottish football, as you've pointed out, a successful Euros. But based on what I've seen so far in pre-season, I'm going to go with Leighton Clarkson for player of the season. He was in the top 3 last couple of years. I think he might go a couple better and pick up the accolade this season. And final prediction is player to watch. Callum's highlighted the Icelandic signing of Kjartan Kjartansson. Do you want to put a name forward for that?
Yeah, I've gone different to Callum. I think Kjartan will be a player to watch, and I'm excited to see how he does develop this season. But for me, I've gone for Nicholas Milanovic. I feel like we've not really seen enough of him in pre-season, and I think against Ipswich he did have sort of flashes where he did show that he could be quite a threat. Going forward for us, and certainly likes to have a go. So I'm expecting hopefully a few wonder goals from him, and hopefully to get us really firing.
Yeah, I think Nicholas Milanovic is an obvious choice. For me, kind of one to watch. Potentially, you could argue Adil Oshish, but given maybe a surprise with how much minutes he's seen in pre-season so far, I'm going to go with Fletcher Boyd because I think he's got a couple of options. Jimmy Tilleen's kind of opted to play him off the left so far this season. I think he could play in the number 10, could potentially be a striker if needed. So I'm going to go with Fletcher Boyd for the one to watch this season. Again, people say, oh, he's already been watched. We've seen the impact he's had. But given his lack of minutes last season, I think he'll, come back and make a mark this season. So I'll go with Fletcher.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, like you say, with Fletcher off the back of that 3-year deal he got awarded and then never quite seemed to get that opportunity. And the fact he hasn't been loaned out in, the last season or so far this season. I think Fletcher could be a good shout for, maybe making that impact this season.
Yeah, and a bit different to naming Finlay Marshall and Dylan Lobban in 4-4-2, which is what happens when you have to write that article in the middle of June before the club berate their academy and loan half of them back out again. So, slight change to what I've written down there. But there's some changes still afoot, I'm sure, to the playing squad, Phil. That takes us on to the final part of the show. Transfer talk. Jimmy Tilleen coming out and saying he still wants to get 4 more players in. After Friday night, does that feel a surprise or realistic kind of need for the squad?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a few places where we're maybe still looking a little bit lighter. And I think, as we said earlier, the sort of news today that Pape Gueye looks like he could be on his way to Turkey. Maybe then does add fuel to that fire of, if there's outgoings, there's surely incomings, and especially in that centre forward position, I can see us maybe bringing in 1 or 2 more, obviously relinked with the 6'4" Serb from AC Milan. Obviously Yengi in there, Pape leaving you, with potentially 4 strikers, 2 of which being Sockler and Ambrose, and the other one being Yengi, who's a rather unknown quantity, but did come in for quite a bit of flack on Friday night. So I could see us maybe bringing in 2 more centre forwards just to kind of bulk up there a little bit.
Any other position out of the 4 that you feel is a priority at this moment in time?
Priorities maybe too strong of a word for it. I think goalkeeper, not a starting one, obviously, with Dimi Mitov there, but with our options being Mitov, Suman and Vitols, 2 rather inexperienced goalkeepers as backup there. Obviously, we spoke about before the sort of injury troubles that Dimitar had last season. Potentially a keeper with a bit more experience to be in that number 2 role. Should any injury occur, I'd feel a bit bad if Nick Suman's getting thrown in at the deep end to, an away day in Belgrade if was injured. Similarly with Vitols, it would be a kind of baptism of fire. And another one as well, I've kind of gone left back stroke central midfield, a bit of a Shinnie-esque. Obviously Gyamfi we've not seen any of, to be able to quantify whether he's going to be the starting left back. And similarly with centre midfield, it's just basically try to add those options. It's a position under Jimmy's team does a lot and might be needed.
Do you think though centre mid is needed? Because I feel we're quite heavy loaded in the middle of the park. You've already mentioned Dante Polvara can't get a game, so it's an interesting one. I think for me right now, striker definitely is number 1. Wingers probably next. Again, I know people will maybe say that's a bit of a strange one, but again, you made the comment last episode about Jimmy's reliance on wingers to not only create but score. So again, if we are relying on wingers this season and we pick up injuries, I feel right now we're a bit short. So maybe a versatile winger that could play on either side. Say there's the rumours around Shaden Morris, whether he still stays or goes. I also don't think he did much to prove that he's not more of an impact sub on Friday night. But again, I'm sure that's a debate that will rage through the season. Then I would go to the left back area. I think again, Shinnie's shown that yes, he's the quality to play against lesser teams within the league. But there's a reason why he got moved into midfield in that cup final and didn't play there. And I think again that showed on Friday night against Ipswich. So depending on Gifami's injury, I know Gavin Malloy came on in that left back in place on Friday night. But yeah, for me, I think left back, and then if you needed, I guess you could find a midfielder. But I do still think we are quite heavy loaded in that area. But I guess as much as we're speaking about incomings, there are going to be outgoings. You've mentioned Pape leaving, signed 2 years ago on a 3-year deal for a rumoured fee to be around £500,000. What kind of fee if any, are you expecting to be announced? Because it'll probably get announced as an undisclosed fee.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I want to say, just because it'd be funny, Pape Gay being £1 million player after the start he had to his Aberdeen career would just be hilarious. And I don't think it'll be that far off it. With
Knowing
a
some
sort
of the
of
money
year.
Turkish clubs throw around.
Yeah, exactly. With sort of a year left on his deal, I think that would be quite fair. And I mean, he did obviously have a very good impact at the start of the season. Maybe wavered a little bit returning from injury, but had a massive impact in the cup final. Just his physical presence and his ability to be that outball. So there's no
Had
doubt
an
that he's
impact in the build-up as well, injuring Rio Hatate, we can't
Exactly.
forget.
Exactly. So there's no doubts that he's been an important player to Aberdeen's season. So yeah, I think around that £1 million mark, if it's just shy of it, I don't think I'm going to be too worried. I can, the club do a very good job at ensuring there's good add-ons or a good sell-on. So I'd be happy with that sort of 800 to maybe a £1 million mark. Recoup our fee plus.
Yeah, and thoughts on Marko Lazatic? As you mentioned, Aberdeen being back linked with him. We were linked in January. Again, fans quick to point out his lack of goals for a striker. I think it's 3 goals across the last couple of seasons. But again, you were quick to highlight that's not a position necessarily Jimmy relies on for goals. But if we can get, as I kind of feel, a striker in the right area, which Ode Dabag was kind of utilised for, he could just be that person there to put the ball in the back of the net if we're not creating the chances from the wingers.
Yeah, like you say, I think quite rightly people point out the goal record. I mean, it's the first thing you're going to look at for a striker. We've got a good track record, looking at Sam Cosgrove. If we can bring somebody in that has the same impact as him and, has that purple patch and makes us a tidy profit, then fine. But I think it's an interesting one because he's another big striker. He's 6'4". He seems to like to play with his back to goal and get defenders in tight and turn them. Very similar to Yengi, getting a proper look at him on Friday. And I think, that maybe is how Jimmy wants to utilise his main man, have them drop in that little bit deeper. Admittedly, of overhit him every time, but have the striker dropping a little bit deeper to create that space for like Keskinen and, Milanovic, Morris, whoever might be on that right wing, to kind of come in that little bit tighter and get in behind and maybe be more of the goal threat compared to the centre forwards. So, like I say, goal record doesn't fill me with confidence, but the fact we're signing some mad young 6'4" Serb just feels very FM and feels like it could be good.
Yeah, well, we'll see, obviously, whether that comes to fruition on the back of Pape potentially leaving, because as we're sitting recording this on Tuesday night, most of you will be watching or listening to this on the Wednesday. The Turkish journalist that broke that Pape news said it would be announced on the Wednesday. So that could then get the ball rolling on some incomings for the Dons as well. So there might be a few different names to look out for on the team sheet come Monday night at Tynecastle. Finally, then, just to end, obviously, Tynecastle Monday night, we've said you're lucky enough to be one of those that have got a ticket, Phil. Excited to be going and getting the league season started?
Yeah, buzzing. Like I say, it's good to have real football back, competitive football back. Obviously, it'd be nice to have the opener at Pittodrie. I feel like, it's another season of Monday night away, which is a little bit frustrating. But glad I've been able to get a ticket. Looking forward to seeing all the guys from Fourth Reds who have obviously got my ticket through and some other familiar faces. I know there'll be a lot of listeners and that'll have tickets at Tynecastle. So yeah, looking forward to seeing the Red Army in full voice once more and hopefully taking the 3 points back up the road with them as I gloat my way down Gorgie Road and back to my flat.
Yeah, hopefully in fine voice, and hopefully if Callum gets back to us in a timely manner, we will have a Monday night full-time reaction here on the YouTube channel for those in the Red Army not lucky enough to be at Tynecastle and kind of give an immediate full-time reaction to the events. I might even do a quick preview show once the team news is announced as well, to see what people's thoughts are as well. So for those that like watching us, stay tuned to here to the YouTube channel. Why not leave your comments in the thoughts below on your predictions for the season? You can do that also on Spotify as well. It's always great to hear your thoughts and interact with as many of you as possible as well. But the real football is finally back. It's a roller coaster. Strap in. I'm sure it's going to be fun. Until next time, we'll see you then.